Welcome back to Plane Time in beautiful Oviedo, Florida, just north of Orlando. We're here for the second segment with Ed Comisky. Ed, he wanted to try and escape, but we grabbed him before he get out the door. But we're going back with phase two. Ed, we're going to talk more with you about some standards of, and you know, Flight Standards District offices. It used to be GATO, General Aviation District offices.
Now you're showing your age.
Yes, I am. But now, flight standards, why is it so critical that we review these standards, and what standards are we talking about? We always use the term flight standards, and the standards, the ACS is for the PTS, the standards. What are these standards all about?
Safety, bottom line. To create a safe pilot, a safe airplane, to keep the general public safe.
We mentioned before that there are high standards and there's low standards, and what we're shooting for is medium to high, but not medium to low.
Correct.
Is that something, how diligent do you, this is a loaded question, how diligent do you look at that when you're making your determinations on your check rides?
Well, I mean, the ACS is very clear, and it makes it easy to you know, that it's either in or it's out, and you know, they give us specific numbers to look at. But we also have to look at there's a discretionary level that the examiner has to look at the applicants overall. We're not looking for perfect. They might be weak on one thing but strong on the rest of it, as long as they're using the good judgment, or they make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I mean, our good friend Diego came up with the concept of error management. I just loved it. That a flight test is error management. They make a mistake. As long as they find it in a timely manner and fix it in a timely manner, we're pretty good. It's if they have a consistency issue and so the standard is more about being consistent than being perfect. We want them to be able to consistently operate the airplane within those safety standards. Occasional slip here or there, as long as they get it and catch it and fix it, then we're fine. So it's not as black and white as it may seem. That we do have to look at the person. We have to look at the situation that they were in, how they were dealing with the situation. Because you know, when we get in flight, by ourselves, there are situations, and we're the only one there to fix them. And so that's why we have to look at that as we go through the ACS and go through a practical test.
Ed, we hit on a lot of the negative side of this business, but let's talk about the positive side.
Cool.
How many folks have you given check rides for that are now wearing stripes up on their?
I've lost count. If you add the fact that running flight schools for 31 years, I've had a cool opportunity of climbing on an airplane, and I had trained the captain and the co-pilot.
Wow.
That was cool. And of course, our old people from Comair. That was back when we were together, and so yes, I go through airline terminal, and I see people all the time, all over the country, that have passed through and passed by. It's a small industry.
It is extremely small,
Yeah.
and it's just shocking, because I'll do the same thing. Folks that I've seen back at flight schools and loading on board, and that, are you flying? Yeah, I've been captain here for a year. Cool. I mean, laws of primacy, and where they learn it right, they typically will do it right. The airlines have got it down to a science. I mean, and that's their business, that's their job, moving people safely from point A to B. And that's not just the goal, that's the target. That is, there's no way around that. That's what we are going to do.
Absolutely.
The maintenance aspect of making that happen. We were talking earlier about how many times that you have either downed an aircraft or not accepted an aircraft when it was presented to you as an acceptable aircraft.
Correct.
And one time in my short time in the field, moving the controls back and forth, and you hear something unusual. What is that noise? And it was the aileron cables slapping in the wing. They were so loose. Has that ever happened to you?
Situations like that, yeah. It's pretty rare for like a cable issue, but I have had people say, oh yeah, that's fine. We've been doing that for a while now. Nobody stopped to say that's not good. Their instructors said, yeah, it's fine. But in reality, when we started talking about it, explaining what's going on, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. And that's the thing that we were talking earlier about economics. The economics get in the way. That they're worried about how much money they're spending. The instructors worried about they're getting flight time and making money, and they accept things that they really shouldn't accept. And what that does is it teaches the student that, oh, it's okay if that's not working. That we'll fix it later. But if they don't follow the proper procedures, squawk it, defer it if it's deferrable. At least it's now recorded that when it goes in for next scheduled maintenance, it will get addressed. Because there are things we can fly without, as you all well know. But that's something that the pilot needs to understand. What is acceptable, what's not, how to use the equipment list, or if there's kinds of operations equipment list, to figure out what is actually required for that flight.
Wow. And the economics, again, it still plays a part, as we were saying. On an investigation, ask the maintenance crew, when was the last time you checked the cable tensions? Oh, we just checked it back in May of this year. Well, September, and the airplane's flown almost 700 hours. I mean, you still go back to May? Is that your takeaway? The last 100 hour, did you not check the cable tension? Well, again, we had just done it. So we just made the decision that it was going to be good. Bad decision. No, that's we want to see those screws just wore out on inspection panels. I mean, we can put new screws in, new tender plate, tenement nuts, but we want them to go in and physically check. And even if they don't put a gauge, a meter on it, a tensiometer, use the old finger test. I mean, a good mechanic, after a while, you can feel that's about 40. Or, it's too loose. That's too tight. It's going to wear out bearings and bushings prematurely. The most, and again, this is hindsight. This is rhetorical. The most abused portion, I think, of our checklist is the post-flight.
I agree. That it's on the checklist. They say, okay, we got to do the post-flight, but they don't know what to look for. They're just, oh yeah, okay, looks good, But tires. Did we flat spot a tire? Is there oil leaking out from under the cowling on the nose gear? Was it even if it wasn't a hard landing, we still need to look carefully to see what's changed from when we left.
Excellent, and I really wish that folks would pay more attention, because usually they're just glad to be back on the ground safely. And wow, I got this check ride over me. We'll do the post-flight later. Let's go to the bar. But all aspects of it, post-flight is just as important as the pre-flight.
Correct.
And we really want that to be a standard. Loss of control. That is one of the heavy hitters for our one of our FAA emphasis items.
Yes.
And as far as the mechanical aspect of loss of control, how does that play into, and we mentioned earlier, the connection usually between the yoke and the seat.
That's the weak point.
Yeah, it is the weak point. But there have been situations where mechanically they were led down a rabbit hole, and they lost control of the aircraft because they didn't have enough control.
Well, and it goes back to the pre-flight of the airplane, checking the control surfaces outside as well as inside. That many years ago, it was drilled into me as a young pilot. They called it the four-corner check. You take the control aileron full deflection, full deflection, full deflection, full deflection. So you've checked complete travel. So there's nothing locking the controls or blocking the controls. And the same thing with the rudder pedals is appropriate. There could be something that's stuck behind the rudder pedal. That's obviously a mechanic left a wrench there, or somebody left a soda can in the airplane and rolled back there.
Heavens no.
Heavens no, never happened. So it's things like that I see people, right, left, forward, back, but not all the way right, all the way, and like I say, it was drilled into us at a young age, and that actually the history of it, the four corner comes from or the box comes from the stick airplanes. That you made a box with your stick, and that so we just converted that to hit all four corners with the yoke to come up with the same thing. And it's just things like that over the years the instructor has stopped teaching. And maybe this instructor didn't know it because his instructor didn't know it because his instructor didn't know it, and we get that vicious cycle of all corporate knowledge is gone because they're the blind teaching the blind in some cases, not necessarily, but lesser experience teaching, and it degrades the quality. A copy of a copy is not as good as the original.
I just had visions of Dale Nodorf.
And that's exactly where it came from. Okay. He was the one who drilled it into me.
Good. Law of primacy is alive.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to use that more. We really do. Mm-hmm. And some of the old timers need to get back into the game and share. We talked about this earlier. There's one thing about being a good student, mm-hmm. but there's also being a good teacher, mm-hmm. a good instructor.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't beat it into them. You have to show them, let them make their own mistakes, and recover. Mm-hmm. Did you learn anything from that?
Yes.
And I know that your primary role right now is examining. Mm-hmm. Do you take any ab initio students? Do you still flight instruct?
Not very common. Not very common. I have customers I've worked with for years. I'll do flight reviews and instrument proficiency checks but occasionally a school will say, hey, we really need help with the person. Can you do some lessons? And sure, I'll do it. It's just not that often, not as much as I'd like. Mm-hmm. I kind of miss that part.
I can imagine because you did it for so many years.
Yeah.
But anyone that you would give any flight instruction to, you can't be their examiner.
Correct.
That's a good rule.
That is. that can't hold yourself accountable.
Exactly.
You have to, but you still not. Doesn't look right.
The the Wings program. I know that we give credit for this if someone sits through the entire hour. Mm-hmm. How much do you get into that with your applicants?
It's part of my post-flight discussion.
Okay.
Because they can actually get credit for the Wings program from completing a flight test. And we have these little sheets we can hand out that gives them an idea of, okay, you just completed this flight test, these are the Wings credits you can get from that. And then they go into FAAsafety.gov and complete that process, and then I get an email so I can certify that it has been done.
The system has been developed and works well if we use it.
Yes.
And the Wings program, there's the Sea Wings and there's Pilot Wings. Mm-hmm. It's a very, the biannual used to be the biannual flight review.
Now you're showing your age.
Now it's just the flight review every 2 years. There's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. After 2 years, if somebody does the bare minimum, mm-hmm. and on their 89th day, they go and get current. Mm-hmm. Or they don't. They go for a year mm-hmm. without flying. That happens.
Yep.
All they have to do is go and do 3 bounces and get current again before they call hire passengers.
Yep.
Could it be that they go for 2 years without flying and go and do their bounces and go get their flight review?
It's possible.
Flight review to flight review.
Mm-hmm.
We're probably going to see more of that happening because of the economy, the way it is, and aircraft rentals, mm-hmm. They're getting harder and harder to find. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have to adjust ourselves mm-hmm. to the new normal mm-hmm. in that regard. And that's the reason that we do talk so much about maintenance. Mm-hmm. And like the aircraft sitting around the field that hadn't flown in years, mm-hmm. You're not going to just put air in the tires and check the oil and put a new battery in it and go fly.
No.
You could. There's some that do, and they make it back. The aircraft perfectly flyworthy,
Yes.
but not near airworthy.
Correct.
So we have to remember to keep that term in hand.
Yes.
And airworthy, not to put you on the spot, but it's only two things. It's just two things that makes an aircraft airworthy or not.
Well.
It has to meet its type design.
Yep.
It has to be in condition for safe operation.
Mm-hmm.
Simple. It's easy, isn't it?
Theoretically. What does type design mean?
That's a deep wicket right there.
Exactly.
But it needs to meet its blueprints, its standards, manufacturer recommendations, and condition for safe operation.
Mm-hmm.
It's not wore out. Your tires aren't worn. Your windshield's not worn.
Mm-hmm.
You have acceptable limits of damage because all aircraft have some degree of damage.
Yeah.
But it's acceptable or not. Do your students, well, I know your students would know better, but do the students that come being applicants to you, how detailed are they in the type design, the standards that we set for that aircraft that makes that a Cessna 172S?
Depends on the school. There's some schools that will get into it and they will understand. They'll actually be able to pull them up and show me them. There are others that will just say, okay, it's got to meet the type design. And they can't go past that surface level, or as we call it, road. They know it's applicable, but what does that really mean? That we don't see a true understanding of that at every level. So yeah, it's an area that instructors, and probably because instructors don't either, and that they haven't emphasized it enough. Once again, there are some great schools out there that are doing that on a regular basis, and they do come out with a good understanding of it. And that's where you got to balance the positives and the negatives and see what the total outcome is. Mm-hmm. Are they able to figure out, is it airworthy, or not?
Well, and I don't want to get down into the picayunish about a placard, and you have half of a placard missing one letter. Is the aircraft airworthy?
Is it a required placard?
Technically, no. It's not airworthy if it doesn't have that full placard, if it's a required placard.
Correct.
So you mean to tell me you're going to cancel a flight because the E is left off of this placard because it says take off and the E on take is missing?
I have no choice.
That's the standard. That's the rule.
That is.
And it's, however, I'd be going after me a piece of tape and I'd be E. There you go. Now
Does
it's
it count?
takeoff.
Absolutely.
The more than one way to skin a cat. However, what are we trying to get away with here? Mm-hmm. We're trying to get away with flying good, safe aircraft that will perform as advertised. That's the bottom line.
Yes.
And it is really the flight manuals. We have gotten so litigious in this world of aviation, mm-hmm. but some of it is good, some of it's bad. But there's a reason for those standards mm-hmm. and the rules. And I don't like to you broke a rule, you broke a standard, mm-hmm. and let's not look at it as a rule, but it is a standard, and we're not going to go below that minimum.
Correct.
Talk to me a little bit about IACRA.
Okay.
In 2 seconds.
2 seconds? It's better than paper applications. Paper applications take a long time. Yeah. But the IACRA system has been in operation for a number of years, and it really helps the applicant make sure that their information is correct, the instructor make sure their information is correct, speeds up the certificate processing part. We still find errors on them, and sometimes at the flight test we have to have them correct stuff. But that's when we sit down, we audit their logbook, we audit their IACRA, their documents, and make sure everything's correct so that when we do submit the application, it goes through, and we have a very low return rate on that on the IACRA files. Paper files, different story. The examiners, we make mistakes on those because we don't catch errors that were made by the person filling it out, mm-hmm. and so that's why we prefer IACRA. But we still work with the old paper paper files. But it does significantly increase the speed at which they get their certificate at the end of the day. And it prevents people from getting certificates when they're not eligible, because it does some checks and balances for you.
Well, and I remember the times that, I can even remember times that we would have to physically type stuff.
Well, back when we were at Comair, 1,200 certificates a year, all on paper files.
Oh, man.
And I signed every one of them.
Okay. But Acra and some of the technology like MedExpress, I mean, it can do a lot for you.
Yes.
And the best thing is just embrace it. Don't fight it.
Yes.
Roll with it. Learn it.
Yes.
A lot of the old timers, they don't even like computers anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with anything with a computer. Well, those days, those are over.
Long gone.
That's done.
Yes.
So the best thing is let's get it done. Let's do it right.
Yeah.
And do it right the first time.
That's right.
As we get into the wind down phase, Ed, I know that there's some things that's been rolling around in your back of your mind of you'd like to share with the guys and gals out there. The takeaways of if somebody is going to go for a flight review and or an examination, they're going to add a rating, and they call Mr. Comisky. Are you available? This is what we're trying to get the folks to embrace and feel comfortable with calling their examiner. Do you refer folks if you don't have time? Do you have other referrals that you?
Yeah, I will tell them other examiners that might have time. A lot of times people request a certificate I can't do, like flight instructor initial. I haven't applied to do the flight instructor initial. So I know a couple examiners in the area that do that, so I give them their names. Once again, at this point, it's kind of hard to say, yeah, they're open. I don't know their schedules, but I do have people that I do refer them to.
If they're just not a flight school, but just an individual, what do you ask them or tell them or require of them to save everybody some time? I've got next Wednesday at 9 o'clock open. I'll see you next Wednesday at ORL, Orlando Executive, at such and such FBO, and I want you to have what with you?
Okay. Obviously, their pilot certificate, medical certificate, photo ID, and then they need to bring their logbook. The logbook has to have the times they need in it, the proper endorsements in there, and then the aircraft maintenance records, including ADUs and all that. I do ask that I get a copy or get their FTN number, which is their IACRA number, so I can go in and look at the application and specifically look at the written test results, because I have to see the written test results because I'm going to formulate my questions based on the things that they missed on the written test results. Every item they missed, I have to ask a question that relates to that. And that's where that ACS has really made it easy, because they have more detail there than they had in the past. The new version that just came out here at the beginning of June, there's more detail for us to ask, and if at all possible, I ask that, hey, can you also have your instructor send me copies of the endorsements so I can look at those ahead of time. Those are things that they show up if they don't have the right one and the instructor's not there to do it, we're dead in the water. And I like to avoid those things. I like to, the applicant's already stressed enough. We don't need to come in and have a paperwork problem when we're trying to vet them for the test, and because then that gets them all nervous, and it's not. They might have a good outcome, but it's still going to make them nervous for no reason. That all the paperwork it's all outlined in the advisor circulars as well as in the regulations what they need. As far as the ACS has all the reading assignments, all the books that you can refer to listed right in each task. And a lot of people don't realize that's where we get our questions from. And we have to use those. That's the FAA guidance. They talk about all the different things they go through, the King schools and all this. Well, where do they get their information? Well, the FAA publications. JEPSON, FAA, they get it from the FAA publication. That is the basis for everything that we do.
Ed, I heard a vicious rumor that you can actually listen to your regulations.
I don't know about the regulations, but they have come up with audiobooks for the Pilot Handbook Aeronautical Knowledge and the Airplane Flying Handbook, so that you could get an audiobook and while you're driving to work, listen to how the aircraft engine works. So learning is multifaceted. A lot of us learn mostly through seeing and doing. There's a lot of information in the book, and I think the repetition of hearing it over and over again will help you with that first level road. Won't take you to the understanding, application, or correlation level, but it'll get you started down the learning path.
So I don't even have to read. I can just
Well,
listen.
no, it's still required. Read, speak, and understand the
Read,
English
write,
language.
English language. Well,
That is a prerequisite of every rating.
I was just hoping that all the folks, I hate to read. I love to read, by the way, but I hate to read. If I could just listen to it on a book, I could do this.
It's multifaceted. They need some real experience too, but it's another tool in their belt.
Well, and it's a big belt.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big belt, but it's very, it's doable, it's achievable. Getting your pilot's rating, your mechanic's rating is a challenge, but I encourage you, please, I encourage you to be the ultimate airman. That's both maintenance and operations. And if you want to take it a step further, be an ATC specialist as well. And if you want to go a little bit more, how about your AME? Get your doctor's license and practice medicine. Be an AME.
No thanks.
Oh, okay. But but again, the aspects of being in the computer, I fought it, but the more you get in it and learn it, and the only way to do it is to do it, to use it.
Yeah.
Ed, we're going to wind it up.
Okay.
And you've given us a lot of food for thought.
Okay.
And the perspectives of a DPE. And I look forward to doing this again. And now that you know when we do it again, you're going to be fine-tuned on all the mechanical things that, I'm going to bring this up the next time I get with Ben on Plane Time.
Okay.
We will look forward to that.
I do too.
And I look forward. Come on down to Lakeland. Let's go fly the Citabria
I'm up for it.
without any paperwork. Okay.
That's right.
I'll show you the paperwork, the logbook.
I need to see that.
I'll show you that it's airworthy.
I would hope.
Thank you so much, Ed, for your time.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure, and I mean that personally
Always
and
is.
professionally.
All right.
And folks, we're going to remind you that stay tuned, as there will be a 4-digit code, and that's what you will use for your application for your wings credit. And go on to FAA.gov, excellent website, and FAAsafety.gov is it can be a little bit overwhelming, but get in it and just remember it. Point and click, learn it. As soon as you learn it, it won't be strange or foreign to you anymore. But the best way to get affiliated with it is to use it, and use it wisely. I'm Ben Coleman, your host for Plane Time, and with our other hosts that we have here at the Florida Aviation Network and all of our myriad of volunteers, we'd like to thank you very much for your time and your attention here, and we'll see you next show.